Good morning. Thank you all very much for being here today. My name is Eddie Acevedo, and I am the Chief of Staff here at the Wilson Center. Before we begin, I just want to recognize a few special guests we have in the room. First, I want to recognize one of our distinguished experts we have at the center, Ms. Diana Negroponte. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. I also want to recognize a good friend and one of the best Haiti experts in town, Tom Adams. Thank you, Tom, for being here today. Tom served in the government for 40 years, and from 2010 to 2015, he was a special coordinator for Haiti. So thank you, Tom, for being here. I want to express how important today's event is. We are here with a very distinguished panel, and we all very much look forward to this great conversation. The situation in Haiti has been deteriorating for many years, but recently has taken a very rapid decline. The security situation is horrific, as you will hear. No one is safe in the country. The gang violence is on the rise, and people are being kidnapped left and right. Many in the international community have sadly chosen to simply give up. Many have decided to take the easy way out by just ignoring the crisis in Haiti and looking the other way. But the people of Haiti are not less deserving, and the people of Haiti are definitely not giving up. They continue to fight, quite literally and figuratively, for a better life, a better way of life for themselves and their families. They risk their lives on the streets in Haiti. They risk their lives taking the treacherous path to reach the U.S., either by land or by sea. Time is of the essence, and we need to not only reaffirm our staunch commitment to assist, but we must also comprehend the sense of urgency that this crisis demands of all of us. We must work together to educate policymakers on the importance of having a comprehensive strategy towards solving the crisis in Haiti, which includes a security crisis, a humanitarian crisis, and a political crisis. And that's why we hope to accomplish a little bit here today. And that's the right thing to do, not only for Haiti, but also for our region, who has sadly not stepped up in this time of need, and for the foreign policy interests of the United States. My job here today is to introduce my boss, Ambassador Green. But before I do that, I'm going to say a little story and hope that I survive after I say the story. In January 2014, Ambassador Green became president of the International Republican Institute. Tom, as you and I may remember, during those years, IRI was no longer in Haiti. They had shut down their operations. And back when I was working on the House Foreign Affairs Committee for Congresswoman Eliana Ross-Lehtinen, we were getting ready to meet with the newly installed president of IRI. And we had one request of him: please go back into Haiti. So the meeting comes, we ask this of the new president, and his response was, I'll never forget, quote, "You cannot be in the development business and not be in Haiti." And he was a man who was true to his word. After a lot of hard work, very recently thereafter, IRI went back into Haiti. And when we were at USAID, we traveled several times, twice to Haiti. I always like to tell the team that most USAID administrators travel to Haiti during, or sadly after, a natural disaster, whether it's a hurricane or an earthquake. We went to Haiti twice under no natural disaster because it was the right thing to do. So it's a man who is extremely passionate about continuing to shed a spotlight on the importance of Haiti and our region. And with that, I'd like to call up here the President and CEO of the Wilson Center, Ambassador Mark Green.
Thanks, Eddie, for that overly generous introduction. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Wilson Center. You know, the Wilson Center was chartered by Congress itself some 5 decades ago for the purpose, in their words, of strengthening the fruitful relation between the world of learning and the world of public affairs. While many institutions claim to be independent and nonpartisan, we have to be. It's in our charter and it's in our DNA. And what I tell the team over and over again is that unique status brings special obligations. Most importantly, not to duplicate what others are doing, but instead to focus on the most important and the undercovered, which brings us to Haiti. Tragically, one of the most undercovered countries in crises anywhere in the world. If not for Jacqueline Charles, quite frankly, nobody would be reading about Haiti. I have visited Haiti several times, twice when I was administrator. It is not possible to visit Haiti and to meet with its citizens and not have your heart captured by the Haitian people or broken by their plight and their daily challenges. During my visit there in 2018, I underscored to Haitian leaders the importance of transparent and citizen-responsive governance to bring stability to Haiti, which in turn could help foster long-term economic opportunities. I went back a year later in 2019 and pressed for an inclusive national dialogue and a functioning government capable of respecting the rule of law. And during both visits, I made sure to visit faith-based organizations that are doing their best in the areas of education and health and more to help everyday citizens, clinics and schools and orphanages, remarkable people working under difficult circumstances. Even back then, strikes, protests, political instability, and gang violence were causing insecurity in the country. And as Eddie alluded to, today the situation has only gotten worse, much worse. UNICEF tells us that there were over 300 cases of children and women being kidnapped in the first part of this year, 3 times the number compared to 2021. The World Bank tells us that nearly 30% of the population is living on $2.15 per day or less, and half the urban population lives in slums. And because of the void in governance, we add to this mix utter lawlessness and gang rule. Armed groups are now said to control 80% of the capital. More than 2,500 Haitians have been killed by gang violence already this year. As I mentioned, kidnappings of children and women have become the norm. According to the Migration Policy Institute, from October 2022 to June 2023, our Coast Guard interdicted more than 4,600 Haitian immigrants at sea, and Customs and Border Patrol have acknowledged record levels of Haitians at our southern border. Can you blame them? The everyday people fleeing? And do we really believe that new restrictions and rules and policies will actually stop them from trying, even if we send them back? It's tragic. There are a few glimmers of hope. Kenya has stepped up and offered to provide security support in the country. But ultimately, it will be the mission they have and the resources they receive that will determine whether these glimmers are anything more than just that, glimmers. To be clear, it's essential that these forces not only protect key installations, but support and enable the Haitian National Police to take these gangs on. Otherwise, it won't matter much to the long-suffering people of that land. And the objective can't be merely to take Haiti off the front pages. It must be to address the profound dysfunction in the country's government. There is not one single Haitian elected official left in the country. Let me repeat that. There is not one single Haitian elected official in the country. Who speaks for the people? Who has the mandate? Who has the credibility to make the tough choices? Once the security situation is stabilized, an inclusive process must be launched to bring credible elections before the people, to help the government get up and working again, to get the parliament back in to do their jobs and duty, to rewrite a Haitian constitution because the current one is outdated and in serious need of reform, to find common ground. As I said earlier, I've been to Haiti, and I've been to Haiti more than once, and I traveled up country outside Port-au-Prince. The Haitian people are good people, people of character, who have been hit over and over again, man-made disasters, natural disasters, one after the other, and yet they continue to work and to move about and to dream for their children. In these days of strategic competition, we talk so much about spheres of influence. How about spheres of obligation, spheres of compassion, just miles from our shore? Jacqueline, I turn it over to you, and thank you for all that you've done to make sure that this story does get out there.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming this morning, and for those who are watching this online, thank you for being interested in the situation in Haiti. And today we have a very esteemed, high-level panel, and I feel very honored to have you all take the time out of your day to come here and to discuss it. We don't have a lot of time, but lots of questions, but also an opportunity that to share and hopefully to give individuals who are in decision-making roles some food for thought. I'm just going to briefly introduce the panels before I get into my questions. Todd Robinson, Assistant Secretary of State in charge of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs. He's a former senior advisor for Central America in the Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs, and he served in Guatemala, Venezuela. He's a career diplomat, and earlier this year, he and I landed in Haiti in the middle of a police riot. And Todd recently came back from Kenya, where he was involved in the conversations and has been the point person on getting a security support mission there. We also have Ambassador Juan Gabriel Valdez, Chilean ambassador to the U.S. This is his second stint. Former ambassador to the UN, and he was also the first representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations and head of the UN mission in Haiti, which is known as MINUSTA. And so we've spoken many times over the years, and I was there in 2004 when he was heading that mission, so a lot to talk about. And of course, William O'Neill. He's a lawyer specializing in international human rights. He's a humanitarian, and he's also expert in refugee law. He's been involved with Rwanda, Kosovo, and of course, Haiti as the mission head in Haiti, and he was involved in the construction of the present-day Haitian police force. In April, he was named as an independent human rights expert on Haiti, but even before then, he's been very involved in the country and following this crisis where we are today. So thank you, gentlemen. And I've got some series of questions, but I also want this to be a conversation as well to get some of your thoughts out in terms of the situation and what we don't see or understand or need to know. I'm going to start with Secretary Robinson with the Kenyans. They went to Haiti. There was a 10-member delegation. They talked about a static force, which raised a lot of questions in Haiti, or concerns actually, because Haitians were saying, not that we don't want you to come, but if you're going to come, you need to come and help us fight these gangs. Can you update us on where we are with this security mission?
Sure, and thank you to the Wilson Center for having us here. Let me start out by saying I am not a Haiti expert, but I feel like I've spent a lot of time in my brief 2 years in this job thinking and working on Haiti. Number one, we are grateful to the Kenyans for stepping up and stepping in to this incredibly complex task. When I was in Nairobi, we had a series of conversations. We were even more gratified that they were asking the right questions. They wanted to know about, they were not familiar with the situation in Haiti, but they wanted to know more about what was happening on the ground, what would be expected of them, what the Haitians expected of them. I think they got a lot of those answers during the assessment mission in Haiti, and the assessment part in Haiti was only one part of their outreach. They part of their team was in Washington, another part was in New York. There are lots of moving pieces to getting this kind of mission up and running. I think on the issue of what they're going to do there, we have to wait and see. This needs to be hashed out between the Kenyans, between the Haitians, and between the UN. As you all may know, there is a resolution being drafted at the UN to give some kind of authorization from the United Nations for this mission. The United States and Ecuador are penning this draft, and I think I think the understanding is we need to see what the three principles decide is most important for what an international force, not just the Kenyans, by the way, but what an and we can talk more about that later, what an international force can and should do during their mandate.
Okay. I want to continue to build on this thread here. Ambassador Valdez, you've been closely monitoring the situation on the ground. Given your experience in Haiti as the head of the stabilization mission, what are the challenges of any mission going into Haiti, and what do they need to know? Because we're hearing that it's still being hashed out in terms of exactly what the Kenyans will be doing, leading this multinational force. But when you look at this.
Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be with the members of the panel. And let me say that I'm speaking in not as an ambassador of Chile, but I'm speaking as somebody who loves Haiti, has been living there for years, and or have lived there for years, and follows permanently the evolution of the situation and of the politics of the country. Let me say that, in my perception, the conditions that you need in order to intervene militarily, and we are facing a challenge that no other military mission or police mission faced in the past. These gangs have nothing to do with the gangs MINUSTA faced at that time. These gangs are much more violent, they are much well armed, and they are much more brutal. Therefore, if you need to confront them, you will have to be tough. That's my perception. If you want to do that, you have to have the support of the Haitian people. If the Haitian people believes that this is not necessarily part of their, or should not be necessarily the way in which these foreign external forces behave, you will have reactions against the force. I have to say that in our case, and this is a lesson that marked me enormously after that, after my life in Haiti. In our case, we realized that the use of troops of MINUSTA were impossible in their wide strength if we didn't have legitimacy, if we didn't have a legitimate government. If you don't have a Haitian legitimate government that will authorize the use of force by foreign troops in the field, it's a serious problem. And I have to say that at present, the perception I have of what my friends in Haiti tell me is that there is a big debate on the government. There is a big debate on the prime minister. There are forces that do not recognize him or do not accept to deal with him. Therefore, the problem the UN will face is that the approval of a force will need to be supported not just by the present government, but by other forces. People like Jonathan Powell, for instance, the British politician, or the person, he was assistant to Prime Minister Blair some years ago, has been extremely active trying to generate dialogue between Haitians in Jamaica and or Haitians who are in Jamaica, between Haitians of one side and the other. And I'm being told that recently there was a dialogue, there was the idea of organizing some sort of plural presidency, which in fact would be some sort of Congress to accompany the Prime Minister. It reminded me of the Conseil des Sages, that was organized when Aristide left the country. The Conseil des Sages was composed by people from the former government. There were people from Lavalas. There were people from the private sector. There were people from the churches, and there were people from the opposition to Aristide. And this Conseil des Sages managed to elect one prime minister. And this was the Prime Minister, Gérard Latortue, who managed 4 years of the country with the President of the Supreme Court, who was the legal authority. But in fact, the use of force was possible only after Preval was elected, because it was Preval who went on TV as a person who had just been elected and told the gangs, either you give the weapons back to the government, or I'm going to tell the forces of the United Nations to attack you. And then people went and delivered the guns, and some of them went into prison at the time, most of them. Then this is my first approach to the problem. The Secretary General of the United Nations, in a letter he wrote to the Presidency of the Security Council last week, made a very important, made exactly the correct comment from my perception. You need to make progress both in the political negotiation to build a wider force than what we have now in the government, and at the same time make progress in the military sense. If you do one without the other, you will have serious difficulties.
Thank you. Bill O'Neill, you were in Haiti in June. You met with various groups on the ground. It's been suggested that while last year the security and the politics were intertwined, today it's almost like you have this separation because the crisis is so great with the security. But can you share with us what you heard from Haitians, and based on the comments of Ambassador Valdez, how important is the political aspect in addressing the security issue?
Sure, thank you. And I'd like to also join in thanking the Wilson Center for organizing this and inviting me. Yes, I was there the last 10 days of June in my first official mission as the UN independent expert on human rights in Haiti. I was struck, first of all, I've been working in and on Haiti since Duvalier left, essentially, in June 1986. I was with MICV in the early days with Colin Granderson and others. I have never seen it worse. I have never seen the human rights situation is absolutely catastrophic. I talked to older Haitians who remember both Duvaliers, and some of them lost big chunks of their family who were executed or disappeared. They say they've never seen it worse. So that says a lot to me if they can say something like that. On the ground, and this is really a dilemma, and Ambassador Valdez, I totally agree that it is a hugely important issue to have a political agreement along with or before an intervention. But I have to say at this point, the people I talk to, especially in the gang-controlled areas, and it's an unscientific survey, but my survey is 100% want an intervention, and they're asking what's taking so long. They are so desperate. They are so endangered and terrorized. They don't know every time they leave their house are they going to come home alive. They can't do anything, schools, education, healthcare clinics. So I think it's one of these really tough issues that we have, the Maslow hierarchy of I have to live first, and then we'll sort out the politics. That's basically what I heard. Ideally, yes, you'd have the politics sorted out before or during, but if there's a choice, and how much longer do we wait? That's what they kept saying. How much longer do we have to wait? How many more people have to die? How many more women and girls have to be raped before something is done? So I'm just relaying you to with what I heard, and I really take this seriously. It was across the board. People on the ground. I interviewed victims, survivors of sexual abuse who are totally abandoned by the government. The state is absent. It's totally absent in these areas around in Port-au-Prince and right outside. There's no support. There's no judge. There's no police. They're afraid to go in there. And these people have literally been left to be on their own. The piece you wrote just a few days ago about the disabled children's home was heartbreaking. I have emails I get almost every morning, similar cases. A 3-year-old who had liver cancer, who was trying to come from Jacmel for treatment, was his family, his parents, and he were stopped by a gang, held hostage for 2 months. And then when he finally was released, it was too late, and the little boy died. There are thousands of cases like that we don't even know about. So for me, I think Eddie said it and others, urgency, urgency, urgency. Can't say that word enough. That's what I heard. Come and do something, and right now.
I'm going to continue with you along this line, and we're going to come back, Ambassador Valdez, to talk about the political situation. If no agreement, then what? But Bill, you were involved in the building of this police force, and depending on who you talk to, they tell you that it's been hollowed out. I just recently wrote a story on how at least 800 police officers have left just in the first 6 months of this year. Considering that, with the King interest saying they're going to come in to assist and train, given the shape of this force, along with the low morale, at least 90 police officers that have been assassinated by gangs, the allegations of them being in cahoots with some of these gangs, do you think they can do it, and how do you salvage it?
Yeah. Yes. This is my position now, totally personally. I think there are some very good, brave, incredibly courageous Haitian National Police still serving. I met the commander in the north when I went up to Cape Haitian for 2 days, and I would recommend, it's really important to not only focus on Port-au-Prince. Obviously, you have to spend most of your time when you're working on Haiti thinking and caring about Port-au-Prince. But in the north, this police commander with very little, not enough of anything, men, equipment, women, cars, whatever. There were no gangs in Cape Haitian. He had worked hard to get the community support. I had meetings with the human rights organizations in Cape Haitian. They confirmed this. They trusted him. If they hear of a gang or somebody trying to plan or plot something, they would give him the intelligence. And that, I want to come back to that word, because if anything is going to work with these gangs, it has to have absolute top-rate intelligence. And that's what MINUSTA had, the JMAC, and they had really good analysis of where the gangs were, the lookouts, the weapons, where the leaders slept at different nights. They had all that down. You would need that. So I think there's a core of HNP. They're not that many. Let's say out of the 9,000 that are left, that's probably being generous, I'd say 2/3 are good. A third are probably corrupt and compromised or whatever. I think with the right, and I'm not so concerned about the numbers, I think it's the quality of the support they get. I think if they have the right type of specialized support that focuses on gangs, criminal networks, how they function, where they get their money from, and then SWAT-type operations, if you're going to have to get kinetic. I think the HNP, with this type of robust, and that's the word the Secretary General used in his first letter, a robust intervention. I agree with you. You have to be tough. Exactly. You have to be very tough. Be ready to do that. I think it can be managed. I don't want to sound Pollyannish, but again, the people I talk to on the ground, I talk to some priests and nuns that they are dealing with the gang leaders all the time to negotiate hostage releases. They tell me when they talk to the gang leaders, they're not interested in fighting an international force. They're not. They don't want to do it if they can avoid it. Why? Because they realize if it's a strong enough force, they don't have a chance. They're very brave when it comes to killing and raping and terrorizing civilians, but if another professional armed anybody, and as we were saying earlier today, a U.S. Coast Guard cutter in the bay, just sitting out in the bay, no gang activity until it left. A Canadian plane flying over every now and then, no gang activity. So I think if you show and project enough power, not all, there's going to be something, it's going to be not always pretty, but I think it's not, and this was I was talking to the Kenyans, I was briefing the Kenyans, and I said, this is not Al-Shabaab. 5 Kenyan military just got blown up in Somalia because of IEDs. Thank God the Haitian gangs don't have that, so far as we know. Why are they fighting? What's their objective? I commend everybody to look at the John Lee Anderson article in the New Yorker. He interviews this young gang member at the end of the article, J. Pup, I think it was J. Pup gang member, and he said, why are you fighting? Why are you here? And the guy says, I don't know. I'm here. Give them $10 a week, a hot meal every day, and a gun, you got them. You give them any other option, a job, school, literacy, they'll drop it. A nun I talk to all the time says gang members come up to her and say, sister, help me get out of this. I don't want to be doing this, but I have no other choice. So I think, again, I think it's manageable, but it has to be the right type of support to the HNP with the right resources and the right mandate. Those are a lot of big ifs.
Yeah. Secretary Robinson, I mean, you've been involved in this. You guys are helping to train a new SWAT. You've also heard on the ground the challenges that police officers are facing, can't even sleep at home. But the question also has come up, and this has been mentioned here, this word robust keeps coming up. The UN Stabilization Mission with a robust mandate between 2004 and 2017, they had between 6,000, 7,000 blue helmets, and they struggled against the gangs. And Ambassador Valdez says, these gangs here are not the gangs of 2004. Kenya has cited at least 2,000 policemen. What are the chances of success? And why you are sure the U.S. thinks that the Kenyans can go in and make a difference?
Well, let me start out by saying I'm not sure about anything. But I agree with all of the comments. I associate myself with all the comments before me. We don't have the option of doing nothing because people are suffering. That said, that doesn't make it any less complicated. You still. I don't have the luxury of focusing on Haitian police who are leaving. I'm focused on the Haitian police, the very brave Haitian police who are staying. The United States, since 2021, has provided about $122 million worth of training and equipping. We have 14 advisors on the ground embedded with the police. We are wholly focused on working with that core that was described and giving them the best that we can give them right now. And we've seen some successes. You will all recall that Port-au-Prince was basically shut down for a large part of the summer because the port was taken, Port of Varot was taken, and society was being extorted by these gangs. Fuel wasn't getting in, foodstuffs weren't getting in. With training, with equipment, they were able to liberate that port. Was it perfect? No, but it got done. And I think we recognize that we have something to build on. We just have to do it. And I want to get back to the other part. The Kenyans have stepped up to lead this thing, but we do not expect they will be alone. The international community, we have been engaged with the international community, looking at CARICOM countries, looking at other countries around the world that could participate either in kind, with equipment, or financially. The United States is committed to making this mission a success. We are going to, at least for the first year, commit to a substantial financial offering to this mission. We will expect other countries to step up, but I can't say this enough. We are incredibly grateful to the Kenyans for taking this on, and we are committed to making sure it's a success.
Thank you. Ambassador Valdez, despite the legitimacy issue in 2006, and I remember the first day of the firefight because I was interviewing Prime Minister Jacques-Edouard Alexis that day, and the forces started at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they were going nonstop till 6 p.m. Against the gangs in Cité Soleil. But the Brazilian infantry and Marines effectively neutralized the gangs enough in Cité Soleil, La Saline, Bel Air, which allowed the elections in 2006 to happen that brought Preval to power. Brazil contingents, they weren't involved in Colorado paternity suits. one, should this not be acknowledged? And two, why is it that we are not seeing, at least publicly, an interest from the Latin American countries in going into Haiti and assisting today?
This is, I think, a very important question. And I have posed it myself because I would love to see Latin American participation. I think that the situation has changed in two senses. The first is that while the beginning of MINUSTA and the initial effort seemed to be successful, more or less until the earthquake destroyed much more than what we can imagine. I think that there is a political analysis of the earthquake that hasn't been made in terms of the impact. I have read information that more than 50% of the public servants died during the earthquake. Then if you look at this situation and you look at the disarray in which the government of Preval remained after the earthquake. I arrived there on Thursday. The earthquake happened on Tuesday, and we had to find the president, I was informed that he was on a motorcycle going around the city. And there was no government. I think that from there onwards, MINUSTA had serious problems in managing the situation.
They lost their top command.
Yes.
They died in the quake.
Of course, and there were a series of soldiers killed by the earthquake, Brazilians particularly. Then the deterioration both of the government and the state and of MINUSTA was evident. Then came the cholera catastrophe. MINUSTA left the country in a situation of decay and of very wide criticism. And I think that Latin Americans felt that very deeply. There was a moment in which, let me be frank, I went to Canada, there was an audience, and I said I was from MINUSTA, and they almost attacked me. I mean, the idea was that MINUSTA was a complete disaster and a catastrophe, and that this is not true. This is definitely not true. The point is that there was an evolution after the earthquake which was, in a sense, very disastrous. This is the first factor that I think affects the will of the Latin Americans to continue to participate. The second one, I have to say, is that the increase in crime in Latin America is enormous. The increase in the violence of crime is unique in the world, in fact. Therefore, the idea of Latin American countries to send soldiers or policemen to Haiti is something that wouldn't be accepted by public opinion. This is the case of my country, for instance, which is tragic, but it is like that. Therefore, even if our presidents have discussed the situation among themselves, and I think that President Lula has considered it seriously and analyzed it, I don't see the possibility of troops or policemen. Policemen is much more difficult even than troops, of course, because policemen have a different role. Yet, I fully believe that we could be of help in Latin America if there is a force that is constituted, as the Secretary is mentioning, and we could support that force technically with people there who could discuss the strategies that should be followed in order to put an end to the gang power. I think that is absolutely possible. Let me tell you one thing that might sound a bit out of the way, but I would like to mention it because it was a debate we had at the time with the Secretary General of the OAS, José Miguel Insulza. When I was leaving the country, we said, what can we do in order to support the police? And Insulza said something like, why don't we organize in Haiti the Pan-American or Inter-American School of Police? you will have Latin Americans there permanently, and you will have a permanent training, and you will have a permanent modernization of the Haitian police. There is no international Pan-American school of police in Latin in any place today. Why don't we do that? It's of course it's expensive, but if you keep Latin American policemen there permanently, you will see a different situation in the Haitian police than if you simply send them to the countries. We are training around 20 Haitian policemen each year, and they return with a lot of more knowledge than they came with. But it is a fact that the support to the Haitian police is a need that is permanent. And in that sense, I fully agree with Mr. O'Neill in the sense that I also met men in the Haitian police that were admirable. And therefore, I think that these people exist and these people should be supported. But unfortunately, out of this perception, out of this perspective, I see difficulties in which, in adding Latin America to the contingent that is being planned for Kenyans and others at present.
Thank you. Bill, let's go to this issue of urgency. Haitians today feel like they are running out of time. They don't have the luxury of time. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen the U.S. Embassy tell Americans at least twice, you need to get out as soon as possible. The U.S. Embassy in Dominican Republic even just put out a tweet yesterday, an alert because of the borders. The Dominicans are threatening to shut down the borders, which for a lot of people are the only way out. Kafoufe, which is a strategic geographical location, people's homes have been burned, businesses going up in flames. At least 25,000 people have been forced out of their homes in the last 2 weeks. Yet there's a lot of focus on the security mission in Kenya and having to work. 2 questions for you. What if it doesn't work? And should there be a plan B, and what does it need to be?
Oh, oh my gosh.
You're the human rights guy.
I know. I think, well, just briefly, quickly, to give me a little chance to think about an answer to your question, there are 2 other things that, well, you alluded to one already, is the imminent possible closing of the entire border between Haiti and the DR tomorrow. Aminanar said, I think it was yesterday, that if they don't work out this canal that the Haitians are going to try to dig to take water from the river Massac, which again is, the name itself connotes the genocide of 1936 of Haitians in the DR. Anyway, he's going to close the whole border, and that's almost lights out for the economy of Haiti, and certainly who knows what can happen. Second is the closing of the sanitarium, the only TB sanitarium in the country, mostly because the patients had to run away because gangs had surrounded it. So now you have over 100 tuberculosis patients who may or may not have multi-drug resistant type of tuberculosis. I've learned a lot about tuberculosis in the last week, thanks to some friends of mine who are pulmonary specialists and have dealt with TB in U.S. cities. And when I describe the situation for them in Port-au-Prince, they say this is catastrophic. So a TB outbreak is the last thing obviously anyone needs, but certainly Haiti. So this has to work. This is really something has to be done. I keep coming back to that. If it doesn't work, even with an open border, even with no TB outbreak, that the problems that are there now, I don't know how a Haitian gets through a day, frankly. I don't know how much longer they can take. And I know I've said this to you before. It's been 2 years now I've been saying it can't keep getting any worse, and it keeps getting worse. So I think if the country's almost at a total breakdown now, I think we would maybe see a complete breakdown, anarchy, and I mean the government, quote unquote, controls maybe, 10-20% of the capital. Outside, it's not as bad, but everyone's affected by the capital so much. So I don't have a plan B if this doesn't work. I really think this really does have to work. Something has to be done.
Ambassador Valdez, what is your assessment of the involvement and efficiency of the current authorities in Haiti in terms of security and capacity to do their part in resolving the security crisis? I mean, between the police and this government that's there, can they do it?
My impression is that there is no government. This is a fact. I mean, we cannot. If we are talking very seriously, we couldn't. There is no. It would be absurd to say another thing. The government is completely absent. Therefore, now there are people in Haiti who believe that the government is absent, and therefore, if there is no political negotiation, I understand that. There are a lot of nationalists in Haiti who don't want to have foreign troops in Haiti. I also understand that. And I understand overall what has been said here in terms of the urgency. You cannot continue to have long parliaments between one sector and the other. The question is the following, from my point of view, and I will get into an area which is extremely delicate. But this is a very serious difficulty, not just for Latin America, but also for the United States. And therefore, a second option. What does it mean, a second option? If you have a situation in which there is an explosion in Haiti and there is an explosion in terms of pandemics, in terms of a complete disaster, will the United States stay without acting? This is a question I pose myself as a citizen of the region. My question is, I have to say one thing.
You mean directly acting?
Excuse me?
We are acting. You mean directly acting?
Deployed.
Direct intervention.
Yes, you're right. You are involved, of course. But I mean in terms of military presence. I have to say that what William was saying a moment ago about the gangs. The gangs are not, if you allow me to make the comparison, are not Vietnamese. The gangs, each time there is one American soldier in Port-au-Prince, they hide the weapons. They put the weapons under the earth. Therefore, it is clear that, and we discuss this very often with my friends who were ambassadors of the United States there. They didn't fear the Latin Americans in the same way they feared the Americans. This is something that is, whatever the reason, I don't want to get into that, but it's obvious that it is like that. Mm-hmm. Therefore, if this doesn't work, we will have to see. I think that the pressure on all of us will be enormous, but the pressure on the U.S. will be even greater.
Secretary, yes.
Can I just say, there should be no illusions about how urgent the U.S. government, sees this. I've been twice. There's a lot going on in the world. When people ask me what are the top 4 things I'm thinking about during my day, Haiti is always among the top 4. But when you get to the details of, what an intervention looks like, who's going to get involved, these are the details that take a long time. And under what authority? You have a Haitian authority that has asked for an international intervention. You have the UN Secretary General saying, yes, we should do some kind of intervention. That's nice, but when you get into the details of who's going to do what, when, with what, and how, that takes a while. It's going to take. Would I like to be able to do it tomorrow? Absolutely, but it takes a while to get other countries on board. We're circling the globe now trying to get people on board, and they all say we can't get on board until the UN has pronounced. We're not going to commit until the UN has pronounced. So the urgency is felt by everyone. We are moving as fast as we can, and we will get it done. Will we get it done in time? That's what we're trying to do.
So it's been suggested, because the United States doesn't want to take the lead, that has affected the fact that it can't get other countries to get on board. And you just heard Ambassador Valdez says that they were not afraid of the Latin Americans. And so, people are saying, well, are they going to be afraid of the Kenyans? Why is it that the United States does not want to take the lead in this?
Well, I'm not going to go into why we don't want to take the lead, but what I will say is the notion that we won't be involved is also wrong. There are ways, there are areas where we absolutely will be directly involved in this mission. But again, we have to be cognizant of history. We have to be cognizant of what other priorities are out there, and this is not one country's issue to solve. This has become and has been an international crisis for a long time. And it's going to take an international response to get to the right place.
All right, so we're wrapping up, and I've got my 3 toughest questions at the end, of course. Wouldn't be, right? Let's start with you, Ambassador Robinson. What is your assessment of the ability of the forces in Haiti, the police and the current people who are in charge to do their part in helping resolve the security crisis?
Well, I agree with the assessments we heard earlier. I think there are people on the ground who are wholly capable of doing this. There are Haitian police dying every day. They're not, looking to get a passport to get out. They are signing up for training. They are going through academies they're voluntarily signing up to go to academies to train and to do this job, knowing the situation the country is in. I have the utmost respect for every one of them that is signing up that is volunteering to do this. And I'm going to make sure that from the standpoint of the U.S. government, and particularly international narcotics and law enforcement, that they have the training, the equipment, they have and the support that they need to do their jobs.
Okay, thank you. Ambassador Valdez, you heard the Secretary talk about the role of the international community, well, this being an international crisis. Some people have said that the international community also shares a responsibility in what's happening in Haiti today. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And also, is it time, for the U.S. to agree to beef up the Haitian army, to allow the Haitian army? It exists, but because of U.S. law, they can't receive arms.
From the U.S.
From the U.S. But other countries are also reluctant to provide them weapons because of the U.S. law.
I think that it is evident that I think that it is evident that there is an international responsibility, and we have supported strongly the position of the United States in the Security Council. We publicly supported all the text and the resolutions that the U.S. has promoted at the Security Council around, for instance, the Kenyans. We think it's a first step, and we understand that this is accumulative, but the level of crisis there is forces us to think beyond that. Now I'm talking as a representative of the Chilean government. We will support the U.S. in this at the UN on the propositions that the UN is making. This is clear. At the same time, I think that this support will have to be discussed. Will have the way in which this support transforms itself into action, which will take time, unfortunately. And what happens if Kenyans come to support the police, demands a permanent conversation between us, Latin Americans, and the U.S. Let me say that this conversation is not happening in Haiti. The famous core group in which I participated for years, and in which there was Chile, Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico participating, doesn't exist today. It's a group of Europeans and the US. Then this is, for instance, something that led the Latin Americans out of the game, except for all of us, some of us who were interested in Haiti personally. Therefore, there are changes there that should be made in terms of the dialogue. Now, the second question was
The Army.
the army. My perception, frankly speaking, is that we should strengthen the police. The army is a small group of people, and the idea of having an army, forming an army to confront this situation doesn't seem as efficient as the idea of strengthening the police in order to perform these duties. The police, as I said, is conformed by people who, some of them are excellent. The problem is that they haven't had the weapons. Let us begin by that. One of the main criticisms that the opposition, in the past at least, the opposition to the last government and to the present government made, was that the police didn't have the weapons sufficient to confront the type of gangs that we have now. The discussion of the army is a discussion that I know is very close to the heart of many Haitians, and I can understand perfectly well because of the history. But to create an army which doesn't exist now, to persuade the American Congress that they need weapons, is a long road. I think that the main question today is to strengthen the police and try to support the police the best we can. And of course, this might fail. If nobody else apart from the Kenyans get into the situation, it might fail, and this is something that I fear enormously.
William? The role of the international community and the Army, although I know your answer to the Army.
No. Yeah, I totally agree. The role of the international community is essential here. It helped create the problems. Haitians have a lot. There's so much blame to go around. That's no shortage. But certainly the international community has to bear its share. On the Army, I was very much against it when it was proposed to recreate it. I thought it was a terrible idea. At the time, I'm a little more agnostic, not quite agnostic, but it's there now. But I agree. I think if that money had been spent and the time and energy and resources on beefing up the Haitian National Police instead of trying to recreate an army, the Haitian National Police would be in a better place than they are today. I think that's just logical. So I also think an army is not what you really need for this type of violence. I mean, this is much more crime, organized crime, public security. And the problem with the Haitian army in the past has been it did the policing too. And we know where that led. So this is much more policing. So I would much rather see emphasis, money, and time spent on trying to help the HNP. And you have this army, maybe you send them out to do the earthquakes, the floods, and things like that. Because I just don't think, think about how long it's going to take the HNP to get to the competence level. It's going to be, 20 years if that, for the Army. So I think that throwing money down that road is really not the wisest way to go.
All right. So I'm wrapping up now, and I want to thank each of you, and I'm going to give you each a chance to offer up some closing remarks or some thoughts that my questions didn't touch on, but you want to say. And coming into this, I spoke to Haitians in terms of what's happening on the ground, and you heard a lot of that in terms of security, but also with the private sector. The reality is that people are being decapitalized. People are losing their livelihoods. They're unbankable. The businesses and everything is literally going up in flames. And one of the conversations that I've had with someone who was previously involved with MINUSTA saying, after security, what is the development plan? What is that? That's a conversation that they're begging to have. That there's still billions of dollars that was promised for the earthquake that was never delivered, and some of that money is still sort of sitting there. So that said, we're going to start with Ambassador Secretary Robinson. Just your closing thoughts and by the way, tell us, is the Kenyans going to be involved in the fight, or are they still talking static?
I think the Kenyans, the UN, and the Haitians are going to figure that out, and they will inform us. So thought number one, we talk a lot about the role of the international community, but at the end of the day, if Haitians can't be a main player in resolving these issues, then whatever else happens is not going to stick. We have been down this path before with varying degrees of interventions from the international community. At the end of the day, Haitians have to take ownership at a political level to resolve this issue, or it's not. We will be talking about this 10 years from now. Maybe
So what's
5
going to
years
happen
from
if
now.
they don't? I mean, I often say that the last time Haitians put their heads together was in 1802, and that's what brought us to 1804. So there's a question been raised about this issue of consensus. If they don't arrive at a consensus, then what? Do we still move ahead, or does everything freeze?
Well, let's have the discussions about the consensus. I mean, at the end of the day, this has to be a Haitian-led solution, because the international community is not going to come up with an answer that is going to satisfy a very proud people. So that's my thought number one. Thought number two, the United States is absolutely committed to whatever this multinational security support mission is going to be. And we will be heavily involved in both financing, equipping, training, across the board. If you are a country out there that whose door has not been knocked on for some kind of contribution, and you're watching this now, we're coming for you. We're going to knock on your door. And number three, I completely agree. The Haitian National Police, the role and responsibility of the Haitian National Police will be key in bringing some security and comfort to ordinary Haitians who are suffering.
Thank you. Bill?
Thank you again. Yes, just a couple of thoughts. We've talked a lot about, and it makes sense to talk about the Kenyans and security and stabilization and force, but I think we also need to really think hard about the broader approach involving development and humanitarian action, because I think the second that it's safe to get back into Brooklyn and Bel Air and Martissan and all these other places with jobs, with education, with clean water, with housing, because otherwise we will be back here talking about the same thing. If you get it right, even if you get the kinetic right, the underlying causes of all this are intense and deep poverty, radical inequality, corrupt and horrible governance, and impunity. So we need another whole session just on that. But I think that really has to be part of the operating procedure, to look at the broad approach to why are there gangs, why are these kids having no other options, and how do we change that reality for them so that there's no reason ever. This should be, I keep saying to people, this should be, if there is an intervention, let's make sure it's the last one. Let's make sure we really get it right so this never has to happen again. And I think part of that is addressing these humanitarian and development issues. The other point, and we haven't talked about it, we need another session on that, would be the justice, judicial chain, courts, prisons, everything else. And just briefly, let's say they start arresting gang members.
Where do you put them?
I was in the National Penitentiary in late June. I'd been there before. I was in Rwanda after the genocide in prisons there. I tell you, I haven't seen anything as bad as the National Penitentiary right now. And I won't go into the details because there's not time. But it would be a human rights violation to put anybody else in that prison. So that has to be anticipated too. And then what are you going to do in terms of trying people? With the Haitian court system the way it is, it's basically dysfunctional, except for a few, again, brave judges. One almost got killed because he's investigating high-level corruption cases. So that angle, too, I think, really has to be thought out and planned for alongside the planning for the security aspect of whatever the internationals are going to do. How do we help these Haitian institutions? And how do you change institutional cultures, which for decades have thrived on impunity and corruption? That doesn't happen overnight either. But you got to start somewhere. So, but that's going to be a reality to whatever is the next phase in Haiti too.
And two thoughts about the prison. One, as part of MINUSTA's mandate, it was arresting gang leaders and turning them over to a justice system. And so that was part of their mission. And second, on the prison, just a few weeks ago, one of these gangs got within 2 blocks of the prison in an attempted prison break, and the police were able to thwart that. So that's the other thing that's keeping people up at night in terms of how close the gangs will get. Ambassador Valdez. Let's do it.
I subscribe everything that has been said before me. I believe that the first thing to say is that it is so good, and I thank the Woodrow Wilson Center for this discussion, because one has the sense sometimes, the feeling that we are not discussing the situation in Haiti, in this city. And therefore this opportunity is a very important one, and I think it has to be valued. The second thing is that I fully share the idea that if there is a mission in Haiti, there is a mission in Haiti of the UN, of course, but the way in which we have to conceive our approach is to contribute not just to the police, but also to create in Haiti something that in fact is extremely weak, which is the state of Haiti. Because most of the approaches that we have had in the past have been related to NGOs, people who go there with all generosity in the world and give and produce, etc. But Haitians themselves have not had at a local level the possibility of developing their own initiatives. I had the opportunity of discussing that with persons that were the intellectual world before Aristide. And they said to me, the only way of rebuilding this country is from the bottom up. The bottom needs to be developed. And I think that this is an idea that has always followed me, because I think that if Latin Americans want to work there, and I think that Latin Americans are prepared to work with Haiti, the contribution we might make in terms of the organization of municipalities, the local power, the way in which they can participate, I think that is something that is extremely important to develop today. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate, Haiti is so complex, and there's so many issues that we could just spend hours talking about, and there are things that we definitely did not touch. But I hope that you all got something out of this. We did not get here in this crisis overnight. It didn't start 2 years ago with the assassination of the president, but it has clearly accelerated all the dysfunction that you're seeing. I do believe, as somebody who covers Haiti, that Haitians do hold their future in their hands, and they need to look at the 12 million people or less, since many have left, that are being held, hostage by this crisis. And when I talk to those individuals, they're not interested in the politics. They're just interested in being able to breathe, to get out of their houses, to send their kids to school. Today, even a child in school is no longer safe because the gangs have taken over. And again, thank you for the Wilson Center for putting this discussion out there. And thank you who read me and who follow the Miami Herald. This is a local story for us. It's not a foreign news. We have a large Haitian community. We've been doing this for decades, and we'll continue to cover this. Again, muchas gracias and thank you.